Hello and welcome to Talk from Superheroes. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Ivamy.
And I'm Diana McCollum.
And you're listening to Talk from Superheroes, where every week we discuss a piece of heroic television or film. And this week on the podcast, it is not what we mentioned last week on the podcast.
You guys might be thinking to yourselves, well, they said it was going to be the Kingsman, so I'm ready and raring to go to hear them talk about the Kingsman.
Because we assume you've all listened to the very end of every episode and take notes as to what's coming next week.
Beginning to end.
Beginning
you guys are
to
all
end.
on board.
Mm-hmm. And last week, we said it would be Kingsman. But it's not. It is not, because cases here are not good. And even if we did feel good about going to the theaters are just closed in Canada. Or in Ontario, at least right now.
I don't know if you guys in the States can even fathom that. No offense to you, but I feel like you're completely open, judging by what I see at basketball games.
Yeah.
So yeah, our theaters aren't open. There's no option to see a film.
So
we can't go to a movie.
We just can't see The Kingsman.
We can't see The Kingsman. If Morbius hadn't been pushed, we couldn't have seen Morbius.
Yes. Even if we could see Kingsman, we probably wouldn't. There was like a final day under the wire. They were like, this will be the last day theaters are open. We're like, we're not doing that.
No.
No, thank you.
We checked the seating. You can check the preview seating. We're like, there's no empty ones, so we're not going.
Yeah, we're going to pass on that.
So someday we'll do The Kingsman.
Someday we'll do The Kingsman, which is what we were scheduled to do this week, but we've changed it yet again. We're doing The Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time.
You can watch it at home. You can watch that baby at home. I'll buy an E, please. It's The Wheel of Time.
E's, or 3 E's. Oh, wait, 4. Damn, I'm not Vanna Whiting this at all. In Wheel of Time?
Okay, yeah, there we go. Oh, because it's The Wheel of Time.
Yeah, I checked the.
I do often forget with shows when they have like a the. It's the titular Wheel of Time.
It doesn't matter, though.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. We're covering The Wheel of Time. We're covering the whole first season. So spoiler warning for the first season, but we're going to give you a spoiler-free review because this only just finished up. It's available streaming on Amazon Prime right now. So we're going to give you a spoiler-free review in case you're on the fence about watching it. Then once you hear the theme music, we're going to get into the spoiler-filled section of the episode where we're going to spill the beans, talk about everything.
But so many beans?
All
You're
over
not
the
even
place.
ready.
Absolute mess. We're spilling them everywhere. But before we do that, a clean, non-bean spilling, beans still in the can, tidy kitchen, no beans spilled anywhere. Spoiler-free review. Diana, did you like it?
Just what's on the label of the can of beans. Yes, I really, really liked it. It might even be a love. Pretty high. Like a high like to a love. I love the universe. I think the universe is so cool. That's mostly book stuff, but like this TV show did a good job of like being like, this is the universe. I like the magic. I love like warders, and I like that ladies have magic. I think this is so cool. I really like all the characters. All the characters are either a like or a love. Some are lesser or lower, but no characters I dislike. I love how clean and straightforward the story is. It's for a show with so many characters, it can get really bogged down and complicated, but you're like, I know exactly what's happening all the time, despite all these crazy fantasy words. I think like the finale is probably the messiest part of the show. But overall, yeah, I think it's fun. I like the characters, I like the magic, I like the world. I love fantasy though. I'm having a really good time in the Wheel of Time. Andrew, did you like it?
I really like it.
Yay! Fantasy Andrew is here.
It's a couple hairs away from a love. Like I really like it. One thing that I really enjoy about this show that I think they do really well is that it is a very balanced show. So a lot of the times when it comes to fantasy or science fiction as well, it's almost like when you're making a video game, create a character, and there's a certain number of points and attributes that you can put in different categories. So some sci-fi fantasy is like, we're putting all of our attribute points in world building. It's mostly world building. The dialogue doesn't really work. It's mostly world building. Or, vice versa. Sometimes it's like, it's all dialogue, no world building, or it's all action. This is, I think it's like 8 out of 10s across the board in terms of like what they've invested in for this. The dialogue is charming and quippy. The performances, I think, are grounded but also big and fantastic like fantasy based at the same time. And I think it's just like invested in each realm of what makes good fiction. And in every realm equally, whether that's dialogue or world building or action or characters or every single aspect. I agree with you. The ending and the season finale is probably like the low point for me. It just kind of fizzles out. It doesn't really reach a strong punch. but it is a really fun ride, and it was really joyous for me. I had a great time top to bottom, a clean storyline too. This is. I don't normally love fantasy as much as you love fantasy. I lean a little bit more towards science fiction, but this is. I'm not even going to say grounded because there's fantastical elements of this, but it just really works. It's clean, it's understandable, it's relatable characters who just work. They just work.
Guys, this is so huge for me. Like, Andrew doesn't like shit on fantasy, but he doesn't like love it. So this is a big deal. I'm in heaven. I am so happy. A fantasy thing we can both watch together. I'm so glad to hear you say all those things. Yes, I totally agree. I think across the board, there's nothing that they messed up on. The world is fun. The characters are fun. The storyline is easy to follow. And I think I get what you're saying, because like some things you watch with fantasy, because magic can have no rules, they can just be like, and that's a thing because that's a thing. But this show is very much like, some of you have magic and then some of you don't, but like everything's explained. Like we are all different colors because we chose to be different colors for the Aes Sedai and things like that. Like it all makes sense.
Yeah, and people still, even though things are obviously heightened and magical, people still react like they are sentient human beings. And that's something that I just never really enjoy a lot of the times with fantasy, is how stiff it can be. Where
You
it's
don't like elves.
Where I hate elves.
No elves in
I hate
real
people
time.
who speak in flowing poetry and mystery. And, sometimes it'll be like in a fantasy story, it's like, and a character is floating 2 feet above the ground and on fire and teleports and then comes back and someone's like, what just happened? And then their response is like, what happened will happen, and what happens when it happens. And someone's like, obviously, yes, of course, I have no follow-up questions because that sentence made sense. But sometimes people will speak like this in this show, and very reasonably other characters will be like, I need you to speak like a human being and say the word. So I really enjoy that it does have these heightened elements, but then a character will bring them down to earth. But they will also rotate who the voice of the audience is, which I think is very smart. So it's not just one character who speaks like a person who exists in the year 2022 and a bunch of high fantasy elements. It's a bunch of people who will have individual moments where they have to acknowledge that it's a world of high fantasy. And maybe they're waxing poetic and another is not. But they all have a slightly more different understanding of the world. It's really well-balanced show.
Yeah, I loved watching your reaction to characters who called out bullshit, because I feel like it was the first time you saw yourself in fantasy. Because if you met a sorceress who was like, riddles and dragons and you might be reborn, you'd be like, get off that horse, we're not going anywhere till you tell me what the hell is happening. And you were like, and I could see in your eyes, you're like, yes, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, show.
Yeah, if I met
riddles are bullshit.
If I met a wizard who was like, we're going to go kill a gold hoarding dragon, I'd be like, okay, couple questions. How big is it in meters? Have dragons been defeated before? And when they were, how many people did it take? And how many do we have right now? And if their response is like, look into the reflection of the waiting waters, I'd be like, all right, heart out. This is not for me. I wanted a number of how many troops we have and how many historically have been needed to take down dragons. So that's kind of where I'm at with fantasy.
Love that. So yes, this is wonderful. So I think we're both a recommend for Wheel of Time.
I think we're both a recommend. I think the only thing I would say that didn't quite push it to a love for me is that this is a very pleasant show, but there's nothing about it that reinvents anything. I would say that everything about this show is tropes and things that you have seen done before. There is I'm going to say almost zero element to this story where I'm like, oh, wow, that's a fresh take. All of it, I'm just like, oh, it's like that thing from the other thing. Oh, and like the thing from the other thing, and like the thing from the other thing, and a well-done version of it, but there's nothing really fresh here, which is why it's not quite a love, but I think it's a real relaxing and really well-made watch for me.
I can get behind that. I would say there's one thing that to me is groundbreaking, but it's from the book, so I don't know if the show is like groundbreaking then.
Oh, I would put those two. If you think it's groundbreaking from the book, then I think that's groundbreaking in the show as well.
Okay, I love sorceresses and warders. I think that is so cool. I think like having someone to protect you while you get your spells ready and like fight off anything getting too close to you. I love it. I love the relationship idea because I love like a strong friendship or a bromance or a romance, any of that. And I just love the idea because it takes a while to get a spell ready.
Yeah.
You need someone to watch your back. So I love that to the point that I'm just over the moon about the whole idea of warders and sorceresses. So that's me. But I'll agree, not much more than that is groundbreaking. It's all just really well done, standard fantasy fiction.
Right. And I agree with you. That is a fun and relatively fresh take, yeah. And can it be spoiled?
It can, I would say, because there is a titular mystery throughout season 1, and it is resolved. So
Yes.
if someone tells you the answer to the mystery, that is a huge spoiler.
Yeah, I think it is. I think if someone had told me the answer to the mystery before I watched season 1, I would still be along for the ride because the mystery isn't really what grips me when it comes to enjoying this story, but it is still a mystery with a definitive answer that is answered. So yeah, I think that I agree with you. There's one big spoiler.
Because I will say, I had it spoiled for me what the answer to the mystery was when I was on episode 1. So I did really wish I could have seen the show not knowing the answer to the mystery, because I don't know if I would have figured it out. So that's curious for me.
Okay.
I'll ask you that in the spoiler-filled section.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
So there are spoilers.
There are spoilers, and I think that does it. It's a high like, an almost love from both of us. It's a really good show. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's a good time. Watch it, y'all.
Watch Wheel of Time on Prime.
And then listen to this spoiler-filled section. So now we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into the spoiler section. Let's talk more about the Wheel of Time.
Even more.
All right, so we have seen the Wheel of Time, and I'm glad I liked it. I'm glad you're tickled. I'm glad that you like that I liked it.
This is so exciting for me. Never have I been so happy to have been denied access to a movie theater to see The King's Man, because it meant you watched Wheel of Time. I watched it twice because we weren't going to do it on the podcast, so I just watched it alone. And then we had to put it on the podcast, so I watched it again with Andrew. So I've seen it twice now, and I'm just over the moon. This is the happiest Diana's ever been. This is like Jungle Cruise levels of happiness for me. I'm already having a great time.
That's terrific. And I'm glad that I liked it as much as I did, because I wouldn't say I'm reticent to fantasy, but as we mentioned before, I don't necessarily love it as much as you. And this show, the opening narration, it was a little rough off the top. Within the first 5 minutes, I had a bit of a laugh and was like, oh no, we're going to have a tough time, huh? Because what killed me, so the main conceit of this show, it is a chosen one storyline. It is one person is special, and that one person is going to either save the world or destroy it. There's a chosen one, and it could go either direction.
They're the Dragon Reborn, and they could be good or bad. It's a real Luke, Anakin, Skywalker kind of
Absolutely. And the show opens with Rosamund Pike's character, Moraine, telling the story of the Dragon Reborn. And when she's telling this story, and she's like, she's like, and then the Dragon Reborn can be reborn into any one of us. Anyone could be the Dragon Reborn. Anyone, anywhere. They could be the Dragon Reborn, and they could destroy us. They could save us. They could be anyone. They could be a boy or a girl. And the delivery of they could be a boy or a girl. I was getting stitches in my side laughing, because as soon as she delivered that line, I was laughing, and through tears, I was just giggling to myself going, well, so it's not one of the girls, huh? Because that's not a line you write when it's one of the girls on the show. It could be anyone. And to use all non-gendered pronouns, to be like, they could be reborn anywhere. They could be part of our lives. They could be our savior. They could be our doom. Boy or a girl. I heard you say they. I know you said they multiple times. This is an ensemble show with many lead characters who they're all going to be introduced as, like, which one of these is?
The dragon.
And I immediately know it's not the girl when you made it a point, instead of just leaving it at gender neutral pronouns, to be like, boy or a girl. Girls can be Dragon Reborn.
Girls are cool. We like girls. There's so many girls with magic in this show, guys. You don't even know.
That was a rough start.
What I love about this is that I feel like that just tells me Rosamund Pike failed on the delivery of what that line was written for, because I know exactly why that line was written.
Okay.
Because in the book, they know the dragon's a boy. None of the girls are candidates. They know the Dragon Reborn is a man, because he was a man before, I guess. So they know that. But in this show, they wanted it to be more mystery. They wanted the girls to have a bigger part. So they decided in the show the girls might be eligible to be the Dragon Reborn. So that is exactly why that line is there, for book fans to be like, oh, it could be the girls, or to clarify that it's the boy or the girls. But her delivery, just like giving it away that it's not one of the girls, defeats the purpose entirely.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I didn't even know that backstory. Knowing that backstory, it also makes it obvious that it's not going to be one of the girls.
Well, yeah, if you've read the book, you know who
you
it
also,
is.
it's like, oh, you rewrote it a little, but you're not going to fully rewrite the whole story of the book. But I didn't know any of that. But just in the delivery, I'm like, well, it's not one of the girls then. So now the main conceit of this show is, which of the three boys is this? And within episode 1, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's Rand.
You figured it out by one. What told you that it was
the way
most screen
Rand looks, and the fact that he didn't do anything bad in episode 1. So in episode 1, I'm like, is it the guy who steals, the man who murdered his wife while lusting over others, or the traditionally handsome white man who looks like every Chosen One character in every story that has ever existed? Is it the Jonas brother or the wife murderer? I wonder. Is it the dirty stealing boy? Or is it this lead singer of a British pop band? I wonder who the Chosen One is. So I'm going to say it was like 15 minutes in episode 1 where I was like, oh, okay, so I'm just waiting to find out that this guy's the Chosen One.
I like that you have the same attitude as genuinely some of the characters. I really like in season episode 7 and 8 when Matt doesn't go through the wall, and they're like, and some of them, and Rand's like, well, what if it's Matt? And Egwene's like, it's not Matt. Like, even the other characters knew that some of them were not the dragon, just based on like moral shortcomings and how big a role they have in the world in general. Just like, you see, Matt. It ain't him.
It's not Matt.
Matt has real side character energy. So you are everyone about Matt. I could have seen Perrin. I think his story's like tragic in a cool way.
Oh, I love Perrin's story, and I think he gives a phenomenal performance.
But you're not the Dragon Reborn Perrin.
I think it was a combination of, if you just showed me the headshots of these actors, my immediate instinct would be, oh, it's going to be the boring decision, and it is going to be the traditionally handsome white male lead. It is going to be the person who looks like every action hero, and it is going to be the blandest choice.
And then he's got red hair like a dragon.
And then when you put it in the story, and I'm like, everyone else has made a mistake today except for this one boy. So clearly they're like, everyone else does bad, and this guy does good.
Well, Egwene didn't, but Moraine gave it away that it wasn't a girl.
Yes.
So
I also would have considered Egwene.
You picked up on all the cues. Mm-hmm. All the clues. Snowman, baby. Andrew figured out the dragon.
Yeah.
Oh man, if Moraine and Lan had you on their team,
yeah,
they would have found that dragon fucking years ago.
Absolutely. I would be like,
Andrew Ivamy, dragon hunter.
I'd be like, the wheel has always been somewhat stereotypical. Like, there's some prejudice there. All right, let's admit it. The wheel has recast multiple white male leads. But yeah, that's
the previous dragon was a man of color, but he only got one scene.
That was also thousands of years in the future. They'd evolved past the stereotype.
They'd evolved past, and these books are from like the 70s, 80s, so they're actually early 90s, I think. But they're not. Okay. They're not like written
the most
today.
Modern thing possible.
And the most modern book would not have the Chosen One be a white dude anymore. I don't think the only white dude on the team. Oh no, Matt's white, but it wasn't Matt.
Yeah, it's not Matt. No one was worried. It's Matt.
No one was thinking, this guy's the Dragon Reborn.
Absolutely.
We'll bring him along. He's fun. Mm-hmm. He's got good attitudes.
So despite this, and throughout this episode, I'm going to have some fun goofs just because I find it a charming and personable show. And me goofing on it is actually like, it's meant to be endearing, so don't take my goofs wrong. I really do love and enjoy this show. And I think a big part of it, as we kind of discussed off the top, is dialogue writing. It's so charming, it's so personable. All these people are so real and grounded and varied and three-dimensional. I love it. The dialogue writing in this show is crisp as hell.
The dialogue is really good, and they really gave each character an arc that is completely different, even though they're all on the same journey of figuring out if they're the Dragon Reborn and just trying to get to the White Tower. But they are all on such different journeys, but they're all still supportive of each other and a group, and just like, but charming in different ways. It's not like we wrote one kind of charming character and they're all like that. Like, and one thing that is almost criminal is how much I love side characters on this show. I fell in love with so many side characters that I was like so sad they weren't around more. Dana, the bartender, who's a dark friend.
Yeah.
I loved her. I was so sad she was evil and got killed. I'm like, she's great. Oh my God, I adore her. Aram from the Way of the Leaf, the guy with the dreads.
Yeah.
He was incredible.
The wandering nomad. Wonderful. So incredibly charming to the point that I found it sinister. It was actually kind of off-putting where I'm like, no one is this. Like, I know that you're not real, and I, Andrew Ivamy, want to date you. Like, I want to ask you out. And I don't mean, like, if I were in this fantasy realm. I mean, I'm asking the television out. Like, I'm confused.
Andrew sent a DM to that guy on Twitter.
Yeah,
like, he was like, sorry, Diana, you're out.
Not
I'm
even to, like,
guy.
a fan account that's that character's name.
Oh,
like,
not
it's
the
just,
actor, of course.
Not even
of course.
the actor.
No, it's the character.
It was disarming how personable and charming that character was. And I agree with you. He absolutely adored.
He was charming to the point where it didn't make any sense that Egwene didn't hook up with him. I'm like, you're going to hold out for Rand and not hook up with this guy? Come on. You don't even like Rand. You already broke up with Rand.
That bland little bitch. Get him out of here.
Please hook up with Aram over here.
Yes.
He's awesome.
Yeah,
you don't have to
absolutely.
stay with the Leaf people, like, if it's not for you, but, like, you got to get a taste of this boy. Who could resist this man?
Yeah. And other side character, Steppen.
Oh, you loved Steppen. Steppen wasn't so much for me, but he was great though.
The heartbroken ward who ends his own life because he doesn't know what to do without his Aes Sedai anymore.
But you
my
loved
God.
him. You loved him before his Aes Sedai died. You were like,
absolutely.
You were like, these are my favorite trope of warrior character.
Yeah, well, like, it's just him training with Lan as well to be like, it's my favorite. It's my favorite archetype of tough guy, of warrior guy, where it is someone who is the exact right amount of confident without crossing that razor thin line to cocky and deserves to die. So, like, there is cocky and deserves to die, like what was Pedro Pascal's character in Game of Thrones.
I don't remember his character's name.
But you remember that character who's like, no one can defeat me until
and he
I
starts
can't remember.
gloating, and the mountain kills him.
And the mountain kills him because it's like you are very good, but you're too confident in how good you are.
And you
got
didn't
cocky.
do the death blow when you could have done the death blow.
Absolutely. Steppen is that razor thin before getting that cocky and is just confident and is just that, like, I can do the maximum amount that any one person could do in battle. I am not unkillable. I'm not someone who can never lose a battle. I can lose because I understand how life works and how numbers work, and I can't be everywhere at all times. So it's just that, like, it's really fun and playful, and that, like, that confidence and that charm and training with Lan and just kind of, like, reading the room really well, getting along with Nynaeve right away over the campfire and being welcoming.
Getting her to, like, actually kind of join the group, which even Lan hadn't really been able to get her to do, even though they'd kind of been connecting at that point. He's the one who really got her to open up and be like, we're kind of cool.
Yeah.
We're not bad guys. You can definitely see why you would think that, living, like, on the outskirts and not knowing anything about the Aes Sedai and warders and what they do. But, like, we're just people.
And I think that's just something where, like, so often in fantasy, everyone's a dick about a thing that you don't know. So it's like everyone is just like, what do you mean you don't know 100% of our customs immediately? Or what do you mean you don't believe the belief that I just told you about that you've never learned about before? But Steppen was just this really charming character who's like, yeah, you got your own thing. That's cool. You're critical of us and them. Yeah, that's totally cool. Like, you do you. I'll answer my questions as best as you want, or we could just kind of shut up and eat around a fire, or whatever you want. Like, just that, like, yeah, I've traveled the world. I've seen people who don't believe what I believe share my beliefs, share my conviction. Why would I be a dick? And I think that that's just a very good approach in writing for this character.
Yeah, but I also feel like all the good guy characters are like that. The bad guy characters are jerks about it. Like when the Dark One meets Rand in the end, and he's like, "You think you're a shepherd boy, and that was your dad, you fucking fool."
Right.
But no one else is ever. But like when they meet like the Way of the Leaf, and like, "You haven't heard of us? Like we're the nomads," and they're like, "No." He's like, "Oh well, I'll tell you about the Way of the Leaf then." Everyone is very accepting that there is no mass communication. There are no books from what I can see. Like people just hear about stuff. So of course no one knows every culture, especially if you're living up in the Two Rivers, way up in the mountains. So it's very real that only you can kind of spot a bad guy if they're dicks to the people from the Two Rivers.
Yeah, that is entirely fair. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think like the Red Aes Sedai is like a dick. And she's the only dick.
Yeah.
She's like, "You guys from the Two Rivers, you fucking suck."
You fucking suck.
Word for word what she said.
Yeah. And I think, too, the other charm of the way that these characters are written, and it's a combination of dialogue and it's a combination of just these little beats and quiet moments that they get, is that every character in this is three-dimensional. Yes. They're very well-rounded. Even the stiffer and more stoic characters, which are Moiraine and Lan, the Aes Sedai and the main Aes Sedai and her ward that we see throughout this story. You know, we were talking about a conjurer, a person who has access to incredible magic, and this stoic, I will never blink, I'm going to protect you forever character.
She doesn't blink, does she? Fuck, that is why she looks weird all the time. Sorry, carry on.
It doesn't help.
I hadn't realized she doesn't blink, but you're right.
And then you got like the warrior monk next to her. It could easily be very bland, we don't talk much characters. But we kind of see these little beats and moments amongst themselves where they'll kind of smile and show humanity or tell a joke or acknowledge how tired they are or how long they've been on the road. And it's that little bit of humanity that wildly opens these characters. Like even when someone like jokes about how how Moiraine and Lan rarely say anything. I think it was one of the other Aes Sedai or something was like, even when they talk, they don't they don't talk much. And the room kind of smiled and laughed and be like, "You fucking roasted him." And just that dynamic adds so much dimension to all of the characters in this show.
I agree. And I also think this show, it works really well in that the show is willing to tell stories during silent parts. It's not all in the dialogue. Like you said, Moiraine and Lan are very quiet. A lot of their moments together are very quiet. They'll just squeeze each other's hands or they'll share a look. I think another huge story that is told almost entirely silently is Perrin's. And I think it is so powerful and so well done and so hard to be like, we're going to tell Perrin's story about like the grief he's going through about killing his wife. He's not going to reveal that till episode 6 that he did that. So he's just going to hold that inside silently through close-ups and reactions for 6 episodes. And he's going to have to sell it through performance. And he nails it. And it's so good and it's so heartbreaking. You kind of have to keep like reminding yourself why he's sad. But you do remember it was a big moment. And I don't think a lot of shows would be willing to be like, we're telling this entire character's story through like just looks to himself. Like he's not telling this story with anyone else. This is just his own internal conflict happening. And that's really hard to do. And they did a great job. I loved Perrin's story. It was crazy compelling for how little he got to do.
I fully agree. Very compelling for how little he got to do. The performer really did a good job of it. I think it's kind of written into it, but the performer really made it.
Yeah, it's written into it, but like there's still a lot of shows wouldn't write that story. They would be like, he needs something more to do. He needs to talk more. He can't just be silent all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the fact, too, that he is a large man. There was one scene where I'm like, fuck you. You know who we're talking about. And not to jump towards the end. But
they're both big and brooding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're not.
When they're at the bar talking to, I think Moiraine is at the bar talking to like the oracle, the fortune teller, and be like, the big and brooding one. They're both big and brooding. Like one's a foot taller and is like twice as wide as the other one.
I think Rand is as tall, but he's lanky. No one would say that's the big brooding one.
I wouldn't even say Rand is as tall.
Is he not as tall. He feels tall.
I think the actor who plays Perrin is a foot taller.
Shit.
But
he does hunch a lot.
He hunches a lot is the other thing. But which he doesn't do in episode 1, and he's not doing as much at the end as he comes to terms with what's going on. He is kind of swallowing himself as he's dealing with his guilt, which I think is actually like the actor does a really good job of embodying this guilt that he is carrying. So there is like a hunch, and he talks into his chest, and he's just carrying this guilt around with him all the time. But he is still like a man who is just way bigger than Rand.
Yeah, like I don't know if they wrote this dialogue before they cast the characters,
right.
But they needed to change that on the day. You needed to be like, Moraine does not need to differentiate between which one's the big and brooding one. It's pretty dumb.
It almost felt like it was her being defensive of Rand. Be like, he's plenty big too.
He could be the dragon.
He's big enough, I think.
You don't think he's big?
I think he's plenty big.
I think he's big and brooding. He doesn't even brood, really. He's got a very open face.
Yeah.
Like, Perrin is brood central.
Yes.
Like, if I looked at a room full of people, not even just those two boys, like a room full of regular people, I'd be like, Perrin's the big broody one. Like, out of 1,000 people, it's him.
Rand looks like, and the actor who plays Rand, and I know that he's old enough that this isn't the case, but he has one of those small pores faces where I'm like, you look like you don't have to shave ever. You look like you haven't started growing facial or body hair. And I know that like you are a 20-something actor who just has a good skincare regimen, shaves really well, and probably waxes your body, but you look naturally hairless because you haven't started growing hair yet, versus like Perrin, a man who looks like he has a beard growing on his beard. Like, that's the big brooding one.
There's a reason the wolves have latched onto this man.
Yes.
He's big and brooding.
Yeah.
And he's hairy and he's tough.
He's the embodiment of
wolves.
Yeah, that's the big brooding one.
So that is the big brooding one. One final thing about Perrin, because
Yeah.
it was such a small moment, but it was like my favorite performance he gave was his desperation when he was trying to light the fire when they were just outrunning the wolves.
Yeah.
Just this like, so much was said without being said, because like he failed his wife, he couldn't protect her, and now he's just got to build a fire to keep Egwene alive, and he can't do it, and he's so desperate, and he's like, you can feel he's losing it. He's cutting his hands up trying to light it with the rocks. It's such a small moment, but it was like really impactful. It really stayed with me. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I think that was a beautiful moment too. Yeah, and yeah, cutting his hand up, and I took it as like his hands were also shaking from the actual cold. In that scenario.
They were as well. But he was, he was also like, I need to be able to protect someone. I couldn't protect my wife. I've only got Egwene left. I need to be able to do something.
Gotcha.
So that's what I got from that scene.
Yeah. Now, what is his thing though?
Oh, like his magic thing?
Well, because that's the thing. Everyone else has. Okay, all right. I'm getting into the weeds here, and I'm not necessarily comfortable in them because I haven't memorized the lore of this. But they've all touched the source.
They haven't.
They haven't.
No, they are all potential dragons, and I don't know how they chose who the dragons were. Like, I don't know why Moraine. I genuinely don't know why Moraine can't figure out which one the dragon is.
Okay.
Egwene has touched the source. Rand touches the source several times.
Right. Nynaeve touches the source,
Nynaeve.
obviously. Nynaeve. Or,
All the time.
Yeah.
Constantly touching the source.
Sure.
Matt doesn't. The dagger is feeding off of him, but he never actually channels.
That's right. Matt has that weird, crazy shadow curse from the city, and it makes it seem like he's touched the source, but Matt has not.
I'm pretty sure the show is implying the wound that Perrin got from the Trollocs has made him able to control wolves.
So that was what
It's pretty gray.
That's what I was wondering, because he has that wound and the wolf licks it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
The Trollocs aren't quite wolfy, though, which is what's weird about it.
And the Trollocs don't control wolves. So
No.
it doesn't seem aligned, but the story makes it seem aligned. So I'm just like, is this a guy who had the inherent ability to control wolves, who happens to be going on this journey? Or is it a guy who has the potential to touch the source and hasn't, who happens to be turned into a werewolf type guy on the way to this journey?
I think Matt and Perrin never touch the source because it would drive them mad. I
Okay.
think their abilities are different. Like, I think Matt's going to get powers from the magic stuff in the city, and I think he gets Trolloc powers?
Trollic powers?
I didn't get to this part in the book yet.
Okay. All right, but Perrin is Trollic adjacent. He controls wolves.
He can control wolves.
Okay. That's a cool power to have.
It's a cool power to have. The book actually makes a point, because I did get this far. The book actually makes a really cool point of pointing out that it's been like a really hard winter, and there are actually way more wolves than normal, and they're like coming into cities. So like they even set up that like there's more wolves in the world for him to control.
Well, they set that up in the show too.
Oh, did they set that up in the show?
The opening scene is it's Rand with his father, the shepherd, and they're taking the sheep down. And Rand is like, the wolves have been coming in from the mountains like more aggressively lately. Why have they been doing that, father? And he's like, oh, the winter has been getting worse and the wolves are coming in towards our flock. So they have this conversation about like, fuck, man, wolves are everywhere lately.
Okay, I missed that on the first viewing.
That's the opening line of dialogue is about how there's too many wolves lately.
That's the episode I didn't watch twice. So way to go, Andrew.
Hey.
Now, when you asked what his thing was, now this is going to be me just sucking at relationships again. In episode 7, when all of a sudden they're like, Perrin's into Egwene, I'm like, is he? I didn't get that vibe at all. But I might also just be defensive and didn't want him to be into her because his wife just died by his own hand. Did you feel like Perrin was into Egwene?
I did not. So I'm with you on this one. We're actually on the same page. 90% of the time, I pick up on sexual vibes that you don't pick up on.
And I'm just like, no one's ever had sex. What are you talking about?
I did at least get the tension in episode 1 that he didn't want in that relationship. So I understood that. So there was, when he went to visit her while she was at work, while she was smithing, and they just have this kind of like awkward hug from behind. And he's like, I love you. I'm like, this feels really forced and you don't want to be in this relationship. And I think it's because you want to be with someone else. And like they actually, without words, kind of told that story just in the way they hugged. I'm like, oh, that is we're going to break up soon hug.
That was a hug of someone who had just had a fight. I thought he didn't want to have a kid. So I didn't think he didn't love her. I thought they were like not quite on the same page about this kid.
I actually got the impression, because the way he hugged her and they closed up of her hands on her stomach, I actually got the impression she was pregnant and he wasn't happy about it. Oh, okay,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he didn't want the kid. Like not like he wanted her to get rid of it, but he was like, oh, this isn't.
Yeah.
Like I think that was where the tension was. And because if your wife's pregnant, I just don't feel like that's when you're like, God, I love someone else. Like, it feels like that's the tension then.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So I never got an impression that he was into Egwene.
I definitely never got the impression into Egwene. I got the impression that like didn't want to be in this. Wasn't committed to this, but not necessarily Egwene.
But I like that they actually seed that in, because then there is that little bit of doubt in the back of his head when he kills his wife. Like, did I want to kill my wife?
Right.
Like, because I was 1 foot out the door, whether it was Egwene or not. I wasn't fully in.
Yeah.
And then you always have that little bit of doubt, like, shit, did I want to kill my wife? Which adds that little bit more. But yeah, I did read one theory online that I kind of agree with, which is because Matt's not in the last 2 episodes and they had to rewrite them, they just kind of threw that in for something for Perrin to do.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Just to cause some tension, because Matt was gone and they needed to fill some time.
Right, they needed some assholery, but without having Matt around.
Without having Matt the asshole be around. But yeah, the reason I really didn't want it to be true is because I actually loved this relationship with Egwene and Perrin, and it was a kind of relationship you hardly ever see that I absolutely love, which is we're not actually friends, but we both trust the same person. Like Rand is Perrin's best friend and Rand is Egwene's boyfriend. Right. So even though we're not friends, we fully trust each other to protect each other.
It's the Elaine and George of the group stuck on an adventure together.
Yeah, kind of. Because I don't get the impression that they like know each other that well.
Right.
Like they don't talk, I think, before they end up stuck together on just the 2 of them. But it is like, I feel like it's the same as like if I was just stuck with one of your best friends who I'm not friends with, I won't name them, but you know who I mean. And we'd be like, we don't get along, but I trust your ass. Like we're going to get through this together, right?
Yeah.
We only have each other. And it's just like a thing you like never see. And I think, although I will say, I think I saw it recently, I would say Witcher Season 2, Jaskier and Yennefer, like, we both trust Geralt, but we're not friends.
Right.
It's kind of the same energy.
Yeah.
And so we can trust each other. But it is this really nice platonic, like, safe friendship.
Yeah.
Especially because she was dating Rand, which is why I didn't think he was into her, and his wife had just died. Lots of reasons to not be into her.
Lots of reasons not to be into her. I see what you're saying. I do like that kind of relationship that they have throughout it. I was on board with that. When the reveal of like, oh, Perrin, you're into Egwene, or you have been. It wasn't much of a reveal because I didn't sense that tension, other than, as I mentioned, the episode 1, that he wasn't invested in his original relationship. I don't know if that was a rewrite, kind of a fresh, let's mix it up thing, or if that was meant to be there from the beginning. I kind of like that there's no hints for it throughout, because I feel like that is actually also strong character writing, that even if there is a scenario where a man is not necessarily into the person he's in a relationship with and has a crush on someone else, then accidentally murders the woman he's with, will not be obviously flirtatious for a couple of weeks on a dangerous journey.
No, he's got other stuff on his mind. He might be the Dragon Reborn. He's controlling wolves. He's not thinking of banging.
Yeah, so that's something that a lot of stories would force, because they're like, we need to let the audience in on this in order to reveal it later. But I like that he's very singularly hung up on one thing, and very reasonably so. So there is no moment of flirtation or allowing that to tease or give an audience any foreshadowing of what's to come, if it was the plan to begin with.
Yeah, you know? It's what we've been talking about, how these people feel very real and grounded, even though it is a fantasy magical world. Because another thing they're doing that I really love, and we've kind of already touched on this, but I like, they keep mentioning it and they show it as well, that everyone from the Two Rivers, all the potential dragons, are very stubborn. People from the Two Rivers are very stubborn. Nynaeve especially, and Rand. And they're the ones who keep questioning Moraine, and they're just like, and it feels so good to have a riddle speaker just be like, we're not going until you explain it. And Nynaeve is so good about it as well. She is the one who is most like, absolutely not. I will not automatically go anywhere you say. I am not your girl. I am not anything. She demands respect. It's this really cool vibe that you do not see in fantasy very often.
Yeah, I'm questioning authority.
Yeah,
because
not in like a cool just like for no reason way. For an actual legit reason.
Oh yeah. It's not it's not a teenage rebellion. It's not like, oh, fuck the man, and also I don't know what I'm doing. It is I am self-assured, I am confident, and I have questions, which is so uncommon in fantasy, because fantasy is very medieval, and it is very caste system, social status, and it is you respect someone who has a higher job or more money or wealth or power than you, and you shut the fuck up and you do what you're told to do. And even in stories of like rebellion and shaking that system, it's still like, but you have to agree to that system amongst your little group. So it's very uncommon.
It is uncommon. You make a great point about rebellion, though, because they're stubborn, but none of them ever really like do something dumb. The dumbest thing anyone does is Matt taking that knife when he's not supposed to.
Yeah.
But in Matt's defense, he'd just given his other knife away.
Right.
He gave it, like, we know why he wanted that knife. It's like, I just gave Perrin my knife. I need a new knife. But none of them are like, fuck you, Moraine. You said to go left and I'm going right. Like, none of them do just dumb shit.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. And like, it's nice to have characters who act smart, but still ask questions. But still rebel.
It feels
it's hard.
It feels very Star Wars Rebellion in that regard, where it's just like, it's a lot of people who are like, why are we going here? Like, what is the plan? What is the plan of attack? I disagree. I'm taking my cash and going. Like, there's a lot of different varying thoughts, but no one's a complete moron doing weird shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say there's one trope that this show does that I don't like, and so many shows do it. It's hard to get around, but I just hate it. I hate when really important conversations happen so long after you've met someone. So like at one point in this show, like they sit down, they're in the woods and they're like, so where are we going? And the line before that, Lan said, it's been 3 days since we've seen any Trollocs. And I'm like, 3 days?
You've just been silently riding.
You guys have not talked about your destination or the Dragon Reborn or where we're heading for 3 days? And like, you know, we have to have a passage of time so the world feels big and stuff, but it just always bothers me so much when it's like, oh yeah, it's been a week, but we still haven't, what's your last name? We haven't covered any of this.
Right. Yeah. There's no time. now everyone mount up. We have to go on a week-long ride to the north. You're like,
If we're
so
on
there's
horses,
time.
especially on horses.
Yes.
Like if you're running,
Yeah.
maybe it's a little hard. But if you're on a horse, you're like, he's doing all the work, this horse. So you could just tell me what the Dragon Reborn is, please.
Yeah.
If we can get a little information.
Oh, I can 100% get on
So
board
that
with
trope, it's only really in the first like 2 episodes, but it always bothers me. It bothered me here. It's hard to get around, but they got to figure out a way. Fucking bothers me. It's 3 days. You had to stop and eat. You had to make a fire. You had to sleep.
Here's a goof that bothers me.
Oh, I love it.
All right, I'm with you. That falls into the there's no time to explain. But there's time to explain. One thing that bothers me is the wheel.
The wheel bothers you.
The titular wheel.
The wheel we never see.
The wheel we never see, but the general belief of the wheel in this show. It really bothers me, and it shouldn't. This is nitpicky, and this is just me kind of like being a little bitch, just kind of goofing on a thing.
Andrew, bitch eye for me.
They can't decide what the spiritual belief of the wheel is a metaphor for. And it really bothers me because it messes and it fucks with the themes and the purpose of the show. Because sometimes they're like, it's the wheel. It's the wheel of time, and that's a metaphor for reincarnation. It is we are all on the wheel, and we will reach an end, but the end isn't the end. It's a beginning. We're starting a new loop. And I'm like, okay, that metaphor tracks. That metaphor makes perfect sense. It is a wheel. Time is circular. Life is circular. Life is reincarnated. But sometimes the implication of the wheel is not the ride of life, but that the wheel is a spinning wheel that's knitting the story of time. This whole, like, they're talking about, like, threads, and the wheel spins a thread. I'm like, so is it a spinning wheel, or is it a ride? Are we on it, or is it telling time?
Because spinning wheels, they both spin.
But one has things on it, and another turns things out. Like, when you knit a sweater with a spinning wheel, you don't reach the end of the sleeve and then the sweater starts again. Like, that's not how this works, because there is like in Greek mythology there, and I think that sometimes they allude to, or it seems like this is what it's based on. There are the 3 fates in Greek mythology. The three fates who are spinning time and fate and everything that is going to happen on a spinning wheel. They're knitting, sewing. I don't know enough about creating fabrics, but they are doing some kind of a textile with a spinning wheel, and the 3 fates will pluck
some kind of textile.
Some kind of textile
could be a cotton, could be a cashmere.
Could be a wool, I don't know. But 3 fates are using a spinning wheel, and then what they spin out is the flow and passage of time, and human beings are strings, and sometimes strings on that wheel are cut. And then it ends, and that's it. And sometimes they're doing that on this show. Sometimes that's what the wheel is.
Yeah.
The wheel is a spinning wheel that is putting out a fabric.
I mean, even the opening credits is
a
loom. Like
that's what I'm saying. It's a loom. It is a spinning wheel. It is creating a fabric. It is creating a tapestry that is a story. And then sometimes it's like a fucking water wheel. It grabs water. It puts it up and down again. It really bothers me that I'm like, is this something that turns out something, or that we are on the ride of? And the spiritual belief seems to just vary depending on what is best for the poetry of the moment.
Oh, see, I actually think it's the same thing, because this is going to sound crazy.
Uh-huh.
I think the wheel does create like a loom thing, like you said.
Sure.
But the wheel has finite resources, and when it runs out of stuff, it takes it from the beginning and puts it back in. So, like, if you're the first thing out of the wheel,
yeah,
the loom,
sure,
the loom makes you, and you're the first thing out. You're like the first thing put back in to make more stuff when they run out of stuff. Like, you run out of yarn, and you just like, well, that old sweater, I'm just gonna turn that back into yarn.
Okay.
And I'm gonna run that through again.
I see what you're saying.
Because you're reincarnated. You used to be a sweater, now you're a new sweater.
I see what you're saying.
Made of the
and
same
what you're
material.
saying, while it makes sense, is an insane thing that no one has ever said, and is not how anything with looms or spinning wheels are like. You can't make a metaphor if the first thing doesn't make sense.
I think if you make
I
a
said to
sweater,
you,
you can unwind it and make another sweater.
If I said to you, of course you can, but
Okay.
that's not how metaphors work. If I said to you, if I'm like, life is like a gun. You know, a gun. You put soil in it, you fill it with seeds, Then you shoot it up at the sky and it starts to rain. You know, a gun. Yes, what I have said is comparing life to a thing, but none of the steps I've given it are how that thing functions. That's not a metaphor because that's nonsense. That's not how any of it works. To be
I didn't list any stuff a wheel doesn't use.
Right. Sure. But if life is like a gun, you shoot it, the bullet hits a wall, you grab it, you melt it down, you smelt it, you create a new bullet, you put it in there, that goes on a new ride of life. You'd be like, yeah, I guess, but no one would say that that's how guns work. Like, that's not, you can't add steps to a weird metaphor.
I think the problem is the metaphor involves a machine, whereas the wheel is supposed to be a force of nature. Like, a tree makes a leaf turns into earth makes another tree.
Yes.
That is more of what I think is happening. Tree makes a leaf falls on the ground, leaf becomes ground becomes a tree. But that's a natural process that a wheel can't do.
Yes. Yeah. The people of the leaf, their metaphor makes perfect fucking sense.
The people of the leaf.
Their metaphor is locked down. 100%. Their spiritual belief is flawless.
They really got to lead with the metaphor and not the non-violence belief.
Yeah.
And cut the song, like, just lead with, like, our metaphor's better.
Great metaphor.
No questions about wheels.
Yep.
We're leaves.
Yep.
You want to be a wheel or you want to be a leaf?
Why is the wheel knitting? I don't understand. It's a mixed metaphor, and sometimes she's like, the wheel doesn't want anything. Like, we're just on the wheel. The wheel has no wants, no needs. The wheel isn't telling us what to do. The wheel's just sending us around over and over again. But then there are flat out times when Moraine and Aes Sedai will be like, the wheel's determined it. The wheel, like, they will contradict their own belief and be like, but the wheel has written it in the fabric that it weaves. And then there are other times where someone's like, well, what's going to happen? And they'll be like, but the wheel doesn't want anything. The wheel actually doesn't have a preference. We're on a ride. It's like, well, but which is it, though? You need to determine which it is. And that is a nitpicky thing that bothers me. It's a mixed metaphor.
Andrew's got problems with religion, guys.
With wheels.
No, just wheels.
The leaf thing works. What type of wheel is it? Just fucking tell me. Is it a water wheel? Is it a Ferris wheel?
I don't think they have Ferris wheels
Is
yet.
it a spinning
Although
wheel?
3,000 years ago, they might have had a Ferris wheel. Because
They might have
3,000
had
years
a
ago, they
Ferris
had
wheel.
flying cars.
Hey,
so they had Ferris
wheels. Is it a
wheels.
merry-go-round? That's a very simple wheel. You know, is it a wagon wheel? What is the wheel?
Of time. Is it the Wheel of Fortune wheel?
Bothers
and
me.
you just get Dragon Reborn when you spin the Wheel of Fortune.
Hey, is it the Price is Right wheel? And we're all trying to spin $1, you know?
Ooh, you want to get that.
You want that perfect one spin, and then that's the dragon.
Or the double spin dollar, and you get
Reborn.
25,000. That's the dragon, probably.
Yeah, that's
the
what
double
you want.
one. The
It's
double,
the double spin.
double dollar spin.
Yeah. So don't like the wheel at all.
You don't care for the wheel.
It's a mixed metaphor, and they're getting lost in their own bullshit there.
All right. Well, to a positive then. I
Yeah.
think that's one of our only negatives.
I have one other.
Oh, okay. Well, a very quick positive. We don't have to talk long about. Rand's mother is awesome.
Fuck, that fight scene's good.
That fight scene's incredible. A pregnant woman just destroying fools and having to give birth on a battlefield. And the fight scene itself is incredible.
Yeah.
Just her like heavy breathing, like doing Lamaze breathing while she's killing these guys. And it's like not stop motion, sped up.
Speed ramping.
Speed
ramping.
ramping.
So it'll go from slow motion to fast speed and back down. Yeah, a good visual style that sometimes is like overused and a little music video-y, but it works flawlessly here.
It is weird. Like, I feel like they must have made the choice that this is how the Aiels fight to like really highlight that they are warriors and this is why people are scared of them. But it is also like, why didn't they fight like this the rest of the show? This is like the other fights I thought were good, but this was incredible.
Yeah.
This choreography and like direction and just like the whole story being told by Rand's mother. I'm like, Rand, how are you so boring? Your mom is so cool.
And this is part of the reason why I say like the show is like an 8 out of 10 in all of its categories of like world building, action, character writing, dialogue. It's like this action scene comes around, and I also kind of liked the Trollocs and like the battle of the two rivers and them kind of chasing them down and the way the fade looks.
Ooh, the fade looked great.
there's lots of cool stuff like that I'm like, if you made a show that was just that, it would be like the badass action we're fighting demons show, and you could successfully do that with the style this show has. But it has just enough restraint and other things going on that even though I loved this action scene with the Aiel mother of Rand kind of fighting in the snow, I loved that scene and it's super cool, and I wanted more of it, but I didn't need more of it because I'm like, oh wow, that was an awesome hit. You fucking nailed that. And if you tried to do more of these, it might dilute it, or you might not have the time or the production value. And when you go from that to like fun, quippy dialogue writing, I'm super down for that too. But it was just a really cool action scene and a good moment. And a good thing this show does as well, which is moments that are cool and visually interesting and beautiful character beats. That is incredible world building without being distracting.
Yes.
And I would say that they're even better than like a Game of Thrones at something like that. Because in Game of Thrones, I feel like it would be actually quite distracting. When it would be like, here's a thing from it, a different place or a different generation or something else, and be like, that's a whole thing that we could write another series of books on. I'm like, but will you? I'm like, probably not. But do I care? Probably not. Whereas this, it's like, I'm like, what is the end of that battle? What were your people? What was going on here? I want to know what led to this moment. It was raining, like firing cannonballs from trebuchets in the background. And I want to know all this, but I'm not distracted by wanting to know all this.
No, it is just like, because I think after episode 2, every episode opens with a flashback. And the flashbacks and the opening with them is great because you kind of never get distracted from the POV stories of the main characters. You're not sticking flashbacks in the middle and you get confused about what's going on. Opening with a flashback that just gives you just a little bit of backstory about what's going on, like you said, without being distracted. Because we get Rand's mother, one backstory that you really don't even need, but just like kind of is a great way of introducing a character before you meet her, is the Amerlin seat, the main Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
You get a flashback of her before you ever meet her. She's only in one episode. You get a flashback of the previous dragon. Like, opening with flashbacks that are short and contained and just give you like just enough information is really hard. And they do a great job with it. They make it like emotional, like Rand's mother, crazy emotional. The Amerlin seat leaving her dad was like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a great job with these opening flashbacks.
That scene with the dad was incredible.
Oh my God, the scene with the dad.
Yeah.
Smart as a pike and quick as the river. And
I think with these flashbacks and why they're such rich storytelling and world building and these motivated character moments that kind of motivate everything that comes afterwards as well. But they're self-contained in a way that's not distracting, that it's just an experience for these actors to go on, because it's not like we're setting up spin-off shows or we're setting up like a million flashbacks.
This will be important in season 3.
It really is just like, we got 2 actors for one episode for one scene, and these 2 actors are going to give everything that they've got and withhold nothing, because they're not trying to milk that character arc for another 20 episodes. They got one and done, and one and done is such a powerful thing when you cast a good actor with good writing, which this show does. And the child and father of the seat, what is it? The
Amerlin seat.
The Amerlin seat. The child and father one is a great example of that, where it is great writing, it is a great beat, it is 2 phenomenal actors, and it's like, you've got a couple days on set, you're coming in one and done. Don't hold back. Your entire character arc needs to be in this fucking thing, and actors just get to go for it. And it's brilliant.
It's really, really good. Great work. That will lead me to a negative and a positive episode for me. I feel very conflicted on the episode that's entirely about Moraine at the White Tower. They like reveal her relationship with the Amerlin seat, and you kind of learn the politics of the tower. And I'm very conflicted on this episode because I think it's a great Moraine episode. You learn a lot about Moraine. You learn all about the politics of the tower. And like, it builds the world out and it tells a good story about her. But it is the only episode where the other characters don't tell their story from their point of view. You see their story from Moraine's point of view, and I hate it. You don't see them enter the city. You don't see what happens to them when Moraine leaves the room, because Moraine comes in and she heals Matt. You're not in that room before she arrives. You're not in that room after she leaves. Like, how did Matt feel about the dagger? Like, are you okay? Are you recovering? We don't even see how Perrin and Egwene get to the White Tower all
They're
fucking
just there.
beat up after being tortured.
Yeah.
They're just there. We don't see them after they're healed. We don't see if they want to go to the ways to go through the portal. It really is all Moraine POV, and no other episode is like that. Every other episode is everyone tells their own story from their point of view. But I liked Moraine's story, but this episode is weird, and I like it and I hate it at the same time.
I got the impression watching that episode that it's the heaviest editing of any of the episodes. Like, I almost feel like there's definitely like an hour and a half cut of that episode, and things went wrong, and they were like, we've got to trim some of this. Because there are whole things that I feel like are just flat out missing. Like, I think that's the episode with the introduction of the ogre.
No, it's the previous episode,
That's the
but there's
whole,
still, that is a weird scene.
The whole White Tower sequence, like once all of the crew, I guess I'll call them. I don't think there's
the fam.
I don't think they've given a name to the group of adventurers.
There is no name for them.
The potentials. We both got the potentials at the same time.
Well, that's the winner.
So once the potentials get to the White Castle, it feels like that there is a bunch of story that they had to edit down towards the end of the previous episode and through that episode. And I think there probably were some studio notes that was like, this is all boring politics, and we don't have quippy character beats, and we don't have fun dialogue, and we don't have an action scene. So it's like the pacing of that whole section is really slow. So I feel like it was longer with more details and probably with more. And when you edit it down, it's like, what do we need from this section? And the only thing you need from that section is Moraine
being exiled.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because like she's the only one that the Aes Sedai affects in reality, because the potentials,
they just all go to the portal.
They're going to go to the portal. They're going to go where Moraine tells them to go. So this is just a like, what is the essential information in the White Tower, and it's just Moraine's. So I see what you're saying, and I think it is. I do agree with you. It's slow. It's poorly paced. It's not as good as the rest, but it feels like it is a boiled down version of what they intended to do, because at some point they thankfully realized it was going way too slow. I think it could have been slower, and probably was.
I can get behind that. I do still, but as I said though, I do still like Moraine's story within that episode. I think the story of her in the Amerlin seat is really beautiful. Like the exile scene fucking gets me to the bones. Like having to exile her, and they're like flirting and just barely touching fingers as they hold the oath rod, and they're like hiding their relationship in front of everyone. It's really tense and like sad and tragic but like fun, but it's the only part that's fun of the episode probably.
Right. I when she puts the red Aes Sedai in her place and is like, I know about the dude at the edge of the forest, so you shut up and leave my boys alone. I was like, oh.
I actually didn't care for that part. I actually thought that really got rid of her nemesis too easily, because it was supposed to be the episode where like everything's coming down on Moraine. The Amerlin seat's mad at her because we don't know that she's her girlfriend yet.
Sure.
The Reds are coming for you. They're very mean. And then you find out the Amerlin seat's on her side because it's her girlfriend. And then she gets rid of the Reds super easily. And I'm like, oh, so now you don't have any enemies coming for you. It just felt too easy. I really wanted like more, honestly. I wanted it to be harder because you'd already like your girlfriend's with the president. Like,
right.
You need to have some kind of foil.
Right. You're the president's secret girlfriend.
Yeah. So, like, you can get away with a lot.
Okay.
It's not like the beginning of the episode where we thought everyone was against you. I now know that you can do whatever the hell you want, basically.
Interesting. See, I thought for me, it was a fun character beat, because I'm like, this shows that Moraine has...
Her spies are working.
And it shows that she has restraint, is that she doesn't need to be in charge the entire time. Like, she does have other cards to play, and I like that shows that about the character, is that the character is willing to be trampled on to play a part before she needs to play any hand that she needs to play. So I liked that, but I see what you're
fair.
saying.
No, I get what you're saying.
It does remove a lot of the threats, but I like that it shows how restrained and not vindictive she has been this whole time, where the red Aes Sedai, I forget that character's name.
Lilandrin or something.
Lilandra. But the red Aes Sedai has been a threat. But the fact that Moraine hasn't pettily tried to end this threat or tried to end this rivalry shows, and I think tells a lot about her as a character.
And her intelligence and her information gathering. You're like, oh, she is doing shit all the time. That is cool. Yeah. that's that part. What was the other part that bothered me about this?
Oh, you haven't. Oh, about the White Castle section.
Didn't bother me. Just a funny story I want to share.
Is it White Castle?
It's the White Tower.
White Tower. I was like, White Castle's the restaurant.
Joint.
Yeah.
They might get hungry.
It's adjacent. Yeah.
It's next door.
Yeah.
It's a food court. Just a very funny story that Rosamund Pike told in interviews is the oath rod scene was actually really hard. Not because
God bless that inanimate metal rod.
Not just because of like the acting and like the emotional resonance. They were like, we had to work on the blocking so hard to make the rod not be phallic and sexual because it's two women holding a rod who are in a relationship together.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh yeah, it didn't feel phallic or sexual. You did a great job.
Yeah, there was. You're right. I got no fallacy from that scene.
And it would be really easy to get some fallacy out of just a straight rod that two ladies are holding.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. Yeah. That's just a short little behind the scenes from Rosamund Pike.
I like that. I do have a question then.
Okay.
So just bringing up phallic symbols and a room full of all women Aes Sedai. When we get the flashback to the first Dragon Reborn, the flashback to thousands of years ago, which is technologically and societally speaking thousands of years advanced. So they've got flying cars and shit. It's the Jetsons. It's bananas good. It's damn near a utopia from at glance anyway. And this initial Dragon Reborn, at the time, it seems men can touch the source and control the power.
Yes, they can.
And not be corrupted.
Yes, they can.
As can women.
Yes.
The source is genderless and has no...
Boy or girl.
You're the birthday. You're the birthday. You're the birthday. Boy or girl.
So back in the day, there was no inflection. It was just boy or girl.
Boy or girl.
They.
Anyone
could use the source.
So anyone could use the source. And this guy, the Dragon Reborn, and the Amerlin seat are having this conversation. He's like, I think I can end the Dark One.
Dark One, yes.
The Dark One. I can end the Dark One for good and bring true peace and utopia. And she's like, no, I disagree. He's like, well, I'm going to go do it. And it seems like within the council or government or whatever they have that rules that city or that society at the time, that there was a disagreement. That seems to have been perfectly gendered split because it wasn't an all-female like society at the time. It was just like there's men and women who can touch the source.
Yeah.
The source is genderless. And I guess this dude was just like, all of the men have agreed? And she's like, well, all of the women have... Like, there was no dissenting opinion amongst the genders. They perfectly aligned.
I don't think that's what it was. I think it was that they were split. Like, Aes Sedai are women. I don't know what dude sorcerers were called.
Sure.
But I think they were both the leaders of their group. And she was like, the Aes Sedai aren't helping. Like, even if some of them wanted to, she wasn't going to let them because she's the Amerlin seat. She's the president.
Okay.
She's sending no troops in.
Sure.
So I think some of the women might have agreed with him and some of the men might have disagreed. But she, as the president, was not sending any women to help him.
Okay.
Was the impression I got.
Okay.
Not that no women agreed, but they are still separate, like, just gendered groups. And he's the leader of his and she's the leader of hers.
Interesting.
So I took it as, like, just like, you're not getting the support of the war from me.
Huh. Okay. I think that's... I think that's a very reasonable perspective. I like it. I think it's very silly that it's like, in this society, which is thousands of years in the past, but thousands of years in our future.
Basically a utopia. Everyone's equal. Yeah. We still have gender.
Boys on the left,
magic.
girls on the right. Boys on the left, girls on the right. We have done our government by boys and girls. We've gone for the gender binary and separated the gender binary is how we rule our Jetsons utopia flying car society that is damn near perfect, but boys and girls are separate.
No co-ed.
No co-ed anything.
Co-ed
no
anything.
non-binary.
Separate but equal.
Just boys, separate but equal. We're like, this is our utopia. I'm like, I don't really think that this is super.
But I think that is what it was, because that kind of, even though that was the past, even though they were more technologically advanced, it goes into today, because in today the world is split up with like men run the government, but women run what's called the Women's Council, and they actually also get a say, but they're not part of the government in like the two rivers.
Okay.
So it is still separated by gender even today.
Right.
So I think it was separated by gender back then as well.
Wild that's their vision of the future.
Yeah,
/ the
but
past.
still separated by gender.
Yeah, and that is something that I enjoy. I enjoy like that kind of mashup of sci-fi fantasy. I like that idea of the past future.
Yeah, the past future is cool.
They gave it a Star Wars. It's past future, and then something went horribly wrong.
Because it sounds like Moiraine's always talking in like bullshit riddles of like the last dragon broke the world. You're like, what does that mean? The world's not split in two. Like, what does it mean he broke the world? And then you get a flashback, and we used to have flying cars. You're like, oh, that's what he did.
Like things
he literally sent you back technologically somehow.
Yeah.
Okay. He said no to flying cars.
Mm-hmm.
He wiped them all out. Mm-hmm. First thing on the list.
But now it seems like Moiraine and the Aes Sedai want to do what the Dragon Reborn did that they didn't like that he did.
Well, no, the Dragon Reborn wanted to destroy the Dark One, and they just want to imprison him.
Okay, so there's a difference.
They want to keep him in the prison.
Okay, all right.
Because I think they know that you need balance. He needs to exist, but not be free.
Right, and I think that is something that they haven't a relatively unexplored theme throughout this season, and maybe they'll explore it in future seasons and things like that. But the fact that when they get to the Eye of the World, the prison for the Dark One in the final episode, it's like there's a yin yang symbol on the floor, and it is about balance and this equal flow, and we have like the light magic and the dark magic and how it's visually represented as literally like just white flowing light or black kind of like ooze oil flowing through the sky. And it's this balance between the two, but I don't think they really explore the themes of balance.
They really don't,
this show. Because
even in the finale, Rand's using both.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only one I've seen use both, because it's always bad guys use black, good guys use white, and he's using both. And like, there's a little bit of it when Perrin like picks up the axe, and then the vendor guy is like, "You turn to the dark that easily." So there is like a little bit of talk about like what is light and what is dark, but not enough. And I will say that is actually leads to like my biggest complaint of the season, which is not even like anything they could do about really. I think this season should have been 10 episodes. It's only 8. I think they definitely had enough for 10, and some storylines really got squished down, and they definitely had enough story for I'd say 2 more episodes.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't love the ending, but I don't know if I needed 2 more episodes to make the ending better.
I think 2 more episodes with my changes and my edits would have been way better.
Okay. Well, before we get into changes and edits, I will say my final thing that I don't like about this show. And it's actually a very heavy don't like for me. I'm like, they need to fix this because it's quite frankly terrible. The costumes.
Oh, okay.
This show, the costumes are the biggest fucking miss. It is a huge whiff, and it looks terrible. And to the fact that it undercuts, I think, plot and dialogue and who these characters are, because all of their clothing are exactly the same. There is no difference. They all look fucking identical, and it's miserable. So it's like when Nynaeve is talking to Moiraine and is like, we get to the White Castle, and you look at me. White Castle, and we get a burger. But it's like, we get to the White Tower, and you look at me in my dirty peasant clothes. I'm like, you're wearing vibrant, gorgeous green with embellishments. No character has a single imperfection on any article of clothing.
Okay, now I get what you're saying.
And for these themes of classism that they're going for, but every color, and even colors like Perrin, and it's like Perrin's just wearing brown, but it is the most vibrant, brownest brown you've ever seen. It is amber. It glows. He and his wife own a blacksmith, and they're surrounded by and his is more leather to show his job, but it has no scorch marks, no imperfections, not a cut, not a single flaw. It is honestly and even though this show is an Amazon show, as if all of these characters went onto Amazon and ordered the Amazon Basics 2 Rivers costume, and they all ordered the same fucking thing, and there's There's
Andrew,
no
what you
difference.
don't know is that you can go to Amazon Basics right now and get Rand's jacket. It's a Bane knockoff jacket. I don't know if you noticed that.
It is exactly the.
You can get each one of these looks, and,
Yeah.
and it's like the Project Runway show they have, where right after each episode you can go and buy the winning look on Amazon.com.
That at least would have some corporate synergy and some. If it was done to sell out, at least that's a reason.
You'd get it. It's
But-
like how you forgive Batman and Robin, because you're like, this is a toy commercial.
This is a toy commercial. That's to a certain degree, and that's fine. If it was done to sell out, I would at least understand it. But it was done to failure, which is what really frustrates me when you're trying to display classism and literally royalty has the same vibrancy and color and costume as the poor. Whereas you compare it to a show like Witcher. When you see a poor person in The Witcher, I'm
That's
like,
a poor person.
your shirt is visibly made out of old potato sacks, and your clothing looks like it smells like shit. And in this scenario, even Moraine, who is magic, she doesn't have a magical costume. And when they get back to the White Tower, Moraine's like, wow, we've been on the road for 4 months. Like, you wore one outfit fighting Trollocs, going through the sea and riding a horse, getting stabbed for 4 months. And it is just a freshly laundered Amazon Essentials Moraine costume. And the whole time, Rosamund Pike looks like a mom who bought the Moraine costume on Amazon and is trying to hang out with her teen kids. It's just
Another show I'd watch.
everything is freshly laundered. I hate how there's no detail to the costume.
That is absolutely fair. That's not what I thought you meant when you said everyone looks the same, because I'm like, all their costumes are vibrantly different, but they are all clean as hell. Think like Matt's the only one who looks a little ratty when he gets like really dark daggered, but even then barely. Like,
And-
it's mostly his makeup. His
And
makeup
I was
looks
just about it's
ragged.
Matt, they do a terrific job of I am a man who has been cursed, who has been vomiting oil, and I am fucked. But they 100% do it with makeup. And if you don't look at his face, you're like, you look you are a man who's been vomiting oil unconscious on a horse for 4 months, and you look the same as the richest royalty we ever come across.
Yeah, I can't disagree. They're supposed to have been traveling for 4 months. They fight Trollocs. 4 of them jump in the river to escape the Shadow City, and they look very pristine. That's actually not my complaint about the costumes. Some of the costumes I love.
I'm just imagining the end of Lord of the Rings, but Sam and Frodo look identical to as they do
As
in the Shire.
the day they left?
It just as laundered, the identical costume, because the wardrobe department made up 20 of them, so they always have a fresh one to
and
wear.
they didn't like cut
Yeah.
any of them up or scorch them, or they went into Mount Doom and they look fresh as a daisy. Yeah, they don't get beat up. I think the Aes Sedai look beautiful. I wouldn't change any of their costumes. Her blue outfit in the White Tower is so good. My complaint is actually a lot of them look way too modern. Rand's jacket is a jacket you'd buy today, the one with the outside stitching and like the beige color. Egwene's plaid hoodie thing, like I'd wear that, but not in in a way that I'm like not being a cool fantasy cosplay. Like that looked like a thing you buy at H&M. There was nothing medieval about it. I'm like, a plaid hoodie? Are you fucking kidding me?
They're all doing
With, like,
casual
wool
cosplay.
lining. Yeah. So some of them were way too modern, and they were not beat up enough. Like Rand's a farmer.
Yes.
Egwene at least is like the mayor's daughter, so her stuff can look a little nicer. But after 4 months, it should be beat to shit. Yeah.
Yeah. The farmer, the blacksmith, the spiritual leader, and the apprentice all look identical, and visually from their clothing, you cannot tell them apart. And I would say the Aes Sedai are the closest. I'm with you to being exactly right. Like if we're trying to figure out like where is the focus group here, like it's season 2, they need to make changes. But I think the Aes Sedai are what stay the same. And then rich royalty, you need to add more embellishment. And I think the Borderlands tribes, like the golden armor that the leader of the... That felt like, I'm like, you are a king. You are a leader. That is more embellished than most. I think the Aes Sedai are exactly right as it is. And then higher up people, rich people, royalty need to be more embellished. And the poor people need to be dirtier, muddier, torn up, and look like they've actually lived in those clothes.
Mm-hmm. I will say, your point about Nynaeve not looking like a peasant is very much like the big and brooding one. It's like you're not speaking to what you're actually seeing. That line might have been referring to only women from like the the Outer Lands braid their hair that way. So if you're from the White Tower and you're royalty, you don't wear those braids.
I think she said clothes.
Did she say clothes?
She said she looked at the clothes
That's
on her
totally
back
fair.
or whatever.
Yeah, her
I
outfit's
could be wrong.
Her outfit's gorgeous. It's complex. It's multi-layered. It's bright green.
And it goes hand in hand with one thing that I really like about the show that almost has a statement about the class of the world is that this show, I think, unlike a lot of things being made right now and a lot of fantasy and sci-fi in general, it's very bright. It's very vibrant. It's very
easy
colorful.
to see everything.
Oh
my God.
They do a great job of night scenes. They're clearly shooting day for night, which for those of you who don't know is when you film during the day and then make it look like night afterwards in color correction, which usually just means making it more blue. But with technology, we've gotten way better at doing this. I love the color. I love the rich vibrancy of the world, but they didn't put enough detail in it because all they did was take what they filmed and increased the color saturation. And it makes the trees look really green and the sky look beautifully blue. But it makes the poorest peasant look like they are wearing a royal red regal shirt. And you can't turn up the saturation on everything. I like that the world is saturated because at first, when it's like we've got these poor people, these rich people, these royals, these the religious, and the world is so bright and colorful because the sun shines on you the same. No matter how much wealth that you have, the sun shines the same color, the trees are the same color, it has no effect. But they didn't change the layering for the clothing and for the people and for the cities and the interiors. The color is turned up on everything. Okay. And it should just be turned up on the world.
Andrew, color on world, not color on people. If we're talking about world, this is my last, I'll tell you my last big positive point.
Yeah, let's end on a nice positive.
Oh, this is the thing I love.
I love the color was my last
I love he loves the color?
Of the world.
I mean, you've talked about like the caste systems and like the systems of hierarchies. I absolutely love that this is a world where women are not oppressed in a medieval setting. They, not even just the Aes Sedai, like all women. Like women have jobs. Like Nynaeve is a wisdom. I mean, Egwene was going to be a wisdom as well. There's other jobs though. Like,
sure, Perrin's wife was a blacksmith.
Like this is not the Game of Thrones, like every other medieval thing you've ever seen where women are just like, God, I hope I get married and can be owned because there's nothing else I can do in this world. And like, I guess that's what the world was like, but I don't like seeing that. I don't like watching a show where I'm like, and the women will be oppressed unless they happen to have magic or something and can genuinely fight things.
Sure, yeah. Like, I know it's meant to be similar to medieval times, but it also has dragons and monsters, so we don't need to make it real life accurate. You know, when they're doing Game of Thrones and they're like, but there was a lot of sexual assault. I'm like, I know, but you have a dragon, so maybe you don't need to do that much.
So yeah, there's no societal oppression. It feels like there's no like sexual oppression. You can marry whoever you want. You can have lots of options. And just the idea that only women have magic, therefore all women are respected because any of them could have magic is just, even though only like a very select few of them do, very few women have magic, it is just a really nice, comfortable thing to watch as a woman who loves fantasy. Like, there were so many episodes of Game of Thrones where I was like, please no. As much as I liked Game of Thrones for the most part until it got bad, it is just really nice to just be able to like relaxingly watch a show and you're like, the women will be treated genuinely equal as the men. Like, it's not like they won't ever be tortured. Like, Egwene and Perrin both get tortured by the White Cloaks, but in a very equal way, not in a way that is like, women torture, yeah. So it's just really nice and refreshing, and I've never seen anything like it, where, especially where it's not a thing where it's like a Wonder Woman, where like, women are better. Women, and that's actually not like a dig at Wonder Woman, it's just the only one I could think of, where it's like, women are stronger, and women have their own society, and we do our own things. Because other than the Aes Sedai, women don't do their own things. They're integrated with men in society. They're just more respected. Like Dana the bartender is another great example.
Yeah.
Like no one sexualizes her. No one gives her a hard time. She's just a bartender. So yeah, I love that about the show. I think the world building in that way is so refreshing, so comfortable to watch, so nice. It is a breath of fresh air in the fantasy world, and I want more of it.
Love it.
That's my final love.
I think that's huge. I couldn't agree more. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Love all of it. But let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would we change. So now that we've discussed everything we discussed, what would we change about this if we could change anything? But before we do ask that final question, we will remind you, as we do every week, take a minute, follow, subscribe, rate, and review on wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening to this right now. There's usually a button for it. So just leave us a rating, leave us a review if you've got a minute to type in. As simple as one word, it can be noise.
Write noise down, guys.
Come on, you old plate of soup. Get on in there.
Do you want to be a plate of soup?
Do you want to be a plate of soup? You got to write something.
And then
call
it's
us a plate of soup.
It's automatic.
Ooh.
You write noise, you're automatically
in.
a plate of soup. And you'd be surprised where you can leave a review. Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Spotify, you can leave a rating, but no review. But they just added ratings. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, go give us those 5 stars.
Yeah, it's a new feature on Spotify. So we want to move up those charts. So give us a 5-star on Spotify. Whatever you're using, we really appreciate it. It's a free way to support this podcast. And as well, if you want to support the podcast monetarily, you can hit us up over on Patreon. Patreon is a monthly subscription service where you can subscribe to us at varying levels and get cool bonuses for doing it.
Yeah, at the $10 level, you get extra episodes of this podcast every single month. This month, we mentioned it already. We did The Witcher Season 2 on the podcast this month. We didn't have time in the schedule in December to do that. So if you want to hear us talk about The Witcher, that is up there. If you want to hear the full Matrix,
more fantasy area,
more fun fantasy. Also has some strong women. It's fun. It's good stuff.
It does have some strong women. Yeah,
there are some strong women in The Witcher.
Conflicting
and
women, but strong.
Some funny bards.
Mm-hmm.
if you're nasty like me and you like a bard. Loves me a bard. And that is at the $10 level. And you get access to everything as soon as you sign up. Everything we've ever posted. And we've had a Patreon for a while.
Yeah.
There's some stuff in there.
So check it out. And even if you chip in $1, if that's all that's in your budget, that helps us out huge. If every listener hit us up with $1, it would sincerely change our lives and network and everything that we do, and would be incredible. And also, you can cancel or change at any time, so there's no obligations. If it's in your budget, if you can handle it, hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. That's patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. And now, let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would you change? Diana, what would you change?
My biggest changes are actually about the bad guys, by which I mean like the dark ones. I think there is not a lot of urgency about finding the dragon and putting the dark one away. And I don't like that. I'm like, why are we rushing to do this? Sure, he's weak, but like we don't know that anything is impending. Even though the Trollocs are like following them. It doesn't feel like in like Lord of the Rings or something where Sauron's armies are like, Gondor's been attacked and Rohan's been attacked. And you know he's strong.
They're hitting up everywhere on the roads.
Yeah.
Every town has been like, things have gotten way worse this past year.
It doesn't feel that way. Like people talk about how like the winter's been hard, but I don't get the impression that's from the Dark One. Maybe it was, but I really just need like more things happening that are evil. Most importantly, as soon as they get to the final town, they have to know the Trolloc army is coming way before it's coming. That army just appearing, and I'm like, oh, I guess this is what the finale's about, was very abrupt. I think they needed to spot the army in the ways, in the portal place, get away from it, get ahead of it, warn the city, and then I think the army should come out of the portal, and that's the way they aren't defended against. Because they're defended against the gap, and I think it should come from behind. And then there is a race to get to the eye of the city. The eye of the world or whatever, and maybe that helps. There's not enough Dark One. There's not enough like, what are we racing against? What are we fighting against? I really need to feel like his presence is more in the world. Yeah, more than just like following them around. He needs to be doing other stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. I kind of felt the same, where I'm like, there should be more town to town. People are like, oh shit, things are getting weird, because we really only have like, it's the 2 rivers, and then that one guy who drowns are the only people who ever really see Trollocs or are concerned about them.
Yeah, literally everyone else they run into is like, whoa, Trollocs, never heard of them, never seen one. And it's like, oh, well, so he's not really around yet, huh?
And I think that there could be a way that they could have played into that if they had a like, well, we're doing the work that the world doesn't want to know about. Like your average, like, Moraine being like, this is your average idiot town. People are drinking and they're fishing and they're living their lives. And of course, like everything's normal here, because if we do our job, it will be. And there's a way to do that. Like it's our silent burden type of thing, but that's not what this is. That's not what they're doing. So I agree. A little bit little bit more urgency would be nice.
And it would be 10 episodes. Too many storylines are too short. The Dragon Reborn storyline or the False Dragon story is too short. Everything with Matt's too short. I need a little bit more fleshed out. It's 10 episodes and there's more stuff about evil. Andrew, what would you change?
My change, and it's always, I feel like your change would be easier to get away with when it comes to adapting the novel. And it's always tricky when it's based on a source property, because I feel like my change might inherently change where the direction and additional stories and places that they have to go.
Andrew's gonna fucking break the world Dragon Reborn style.
I love, and I've brought this up on our Matrix episodes, the subversion of the one storyline when a group of people together, when a group of people unite and form a team, the bonds are stronger than any one individual could possibly be. And I think that is a great theme. It's a great metaphor. I've brought this up on our Matrix episodes, if you listen to those. And they even mention it in this, which I find so strange that they bring up what a modern version of a one storyline would be, when they're just like the one, and it's one person, and this one person's reincarnated, and only this one person can do the thing, and then eventually the show is like, but also actually there's a bunch of people out there who believe that it can be split up among a group of people, and that only together they have that strength. And immediately, as soon as the show says that, I'm like, oh, so you know that that's a way more interesting story. You know that that is the evolution of a chosen one storyline that is about community, family, and the strength of bonds being greater than the strength of an individual. And I think that's way more interesting, and especially for this group of characters who by the end of the show have had ups and downs and conflicts, but they don't want to leave one another behind, with the exception of the complication with Matt, which I think would have to be rewritten a little bit. But by the end of it, they all overcome these personal quibbles that they have. And I think that aligns perfectly with if they had to overcome that to work together to be powerful enough to imprison the Dark One. Because the other thing is that this Dark One battle between Rand and the Dark One, it is really just like a quiet conversation, and then there's like a soft fizzle of visual effects, and then it's over. It doesn't really feel like anything. But if we had 5 people surrounding the Dark One, all denying the dark impulses within themselves, which they had heard in the way, or the cave, the cave, I think it was called the way, all denying those voices together, but not necessarily being able to deny them individually. I think that is a powerful theme, and I think that really works.
I think that is a really cool story. I agree. It felt like the show was setting that up every now and then. Like, I knew Rand was the dragon, but I know you've made that change in Matrix before, and I was like, it would be cool if it was all 5 of them. Because, yeah, the vendor guy has that line of, like, it's usually only once a generation, but 5 of you in one town, that's crazy. Like, and multiple people said that. 5 of them in one town, that's crazy. And they're all from the same place, and they grew up together, and they support each other, and, like, they're not a family, but they are. But they are connected, and they will not let each other go. And whenever they get to another town, they're like, no, us 2 river folks stay together. And it would be very, very powerful. I mean, it was going to be Rand because it's Rand in the books. It would be too much of a departure. If it was only one season, maybe you could make that change. Yeah. And it would be very powerful. And I think it's a really cool story of each of them getting over their demons together to fight the Dark One would be really cool. I absolutely agree. You absolutely couldn't do it on this season because the actor who played Matt left the show halfway through filming. That is true. And they had to rewrite episodes 7 and 8, so he wasn't there.
Something's going on there.
So he couldn't say all 5 of them were the dragon.
That is true.
In that case.
And I think that also, like, there is a theme within this show as well about these characters, this society and these characters specifically being told to be alone because that's their place in society. Whether it's Nynaeve being like, you can't wed, you can't partner, you need to be alone. The braid in your hair represents that you're alone, but remember the community. And then Egwene kind of breaking it off with Rand to be like, I'm told I have a role in this society, which means that I can't be with you. And Rand being like, I have a family. And then finding out he's adopted, and the Dark One being like, you don't, you're alone. All of these characters are being told by their society in some regard that you are alone. You have to be alone, and no one can be with you. And continuously throughout the story, they reject that. They reject that societal norm for the idea of, I refuse to be alone because these people are my family. and I'm going to go back for them, and I am going to find them, and I will not let them go. And that is where I think this needed to head.
That would have been really powerful and really cool. Yeah, just Rand alone fighting the dragon without any like feeling that the others were with him.
Yeah.
Like I do like that. Like from just a female perspective, I absolutely love that he was like, I'm not gonna make my girlfriend be a different person to be with me. I'm like, very smart, very good, very healthy. Love that. But in terms of just like storytelling, it's not super powerful. Yeah, that would be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Or even if like one of them was the dragon, but the other four were there, and they're like, "We're with you."
Yeah. We're willing to die or whatever. Yeah, we're
we
a
all
team.
have powers, kind of like how Nynaeve and Egwene channel into that girl at the end. They could channel into Rand.
For sure. Yeah. And then add a ticking clock to that, and the world getting worse. And if they're all there, then that the battle against the what are the monsters? The
Trollocs.
Trollocs. The battle of the Trollocs with the Borderland city would be to buy the main 5 time. Because this whole thing in that final moment is like, it's our final 5. It's the 5 are here, 1 goes off. And the other 4, we need to find something for them to do. And it really is a desperate cling to find something to do. But if it was this city is battling to buy these 5 warriors time, that would be nice.
Cool.
So that would combine well
That'd be cool. I love this ending.
with your ticking clock that you're adding. I like that too.
I like your ending.
I like your ending.
I agree it makes it harder for season 2, but in this season,
figure it out. You know what?
Work it out, guys.
My opinion on serialized like seasonal shows, shoot your shot and go big on the first season, because like
they did know they were renewed when they got
that.
When they filmed
that
it.
I think
they were renewed for 2 seasons.
You know what? I would love that job security as a
great
writer
job
or whatever.
security.
So I don't want to shit on that idea, but the idea of like, well, we're going to have to adopt more books, so let's hold back and not change things too much for television. That is not usually a great idea, even though I liked this show a lot.
Yeah, you write it for television.
And I don't know what they're going to do with Matt.
Well, they've recast him.
Yes. Yeah. But we discussed this. I find this insane.
That they recast him?
No.
People recast people.
No, I don't find that insane. So just, I think before, as we wrap up, this is off the topic of what we would change. But Diana knew the drama, and I didn't. Diana was like, Matt's gone. And I'm like, oh, that's sketchy. And we don't know what happened, but that's not usually a good sign for many reasons. But I'm like, okay, that actor's gone. So obviously, if they're recasting, and this whole show is called Wheel of Time and is about reincarnation and memories and spirits of one person going into another body, they're going to do something where he gets killed and his memories and stuff go into a different body.
Oh, no.
And you were like, no, it's just a new Matt.
Just a new Matt, yeah.
Just could be a different actor who's like, hey.
Hey, Don Cheadle as fucking War Machine. It's me. Get over it. Is Matt's first line, season 2.
Insane. The show has a written-in plot device.
He should just Doctor Who regenerate on the spot.
That is like if you recast Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah.
If you recast Jodie Whittaker with a different actor.
But didn't regenerate.
And we're like, just pretend it's the same fucking doctor that Jodie played, because we don't want to write a whole thing about it. You can't do that.
He might like get some weird like energy in him, and they'll be like, "Your face looks weird." I don't know, but he is gonna be mad. Yeah.
Oh Jesus.
Anyway, yeah, that actor wouldn't come back for the last 2 episodes, and no one knows why. So I will not speculate. There is no official reason of
Something's
why he
gonna
left
come
the
out
show.
at some point. There's no way
It'll
that
come
doesn't
out,
stay quiet
but
forever.
I'm not speculating until it does.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. All right, that was our episode on the Wheel of Time. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. If you want more fantasy from us, you can check out our Witcher episode, which is over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. We covered The Witcher Season 2 recently. And as well, if you're looking for more podcast listening, we also just added a new podcast to the network. It's called The Fandom Show. It is a very unpretentious, ungatekeepery celebration of different fandoms. The first 3 episodes are up right now. There's one about musical flops, like Spider-Man the Musical and Carrie the Musical. There is an episode about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then there is an
The
episode
Matrix.
about The Matrix.
We're talking Matrix with Ashley Cooper. It is a wonderful celebration of people's love of fandom in a completely non-toxic, joyous way, and it is absolutely delightful.
Hosted by two delights. Steph and Kaya are the hosts of The Fandom Show, new show on the From Superheroes Network. So search The Fandom Show wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening to this right now, or you can go to thefandomshow.com. Or FromSuperheroes.com is the network. All the podcasts are listed there. Check it out. A sincere delight, just unpretentious, celebratory joy is what the Fandom Show is. So go check that out.
And next week, we'll be back doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer with Kaya from the Fandom Show.
With Kaya, the host of the Fandom Show.
If
We'll be
you
back
want a
with
little
Kaya.
taste,
So we'll see you next week. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach me on Twitter at Ivimey, Ivimey.
Oh, me? I'm at Words of Diana.
And both of us, we're at From Superheroes.
Oh, shit.
And we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.